At her wedding, my daughter pretended not to know me. So I grabbed the mic and told everyone the truth. I'm a 50-year-old man, and my daughter looked straight at me across a room of flowers and fixed smiles and said, loud enough for the planner and the photographer to hear, "I'm sorry, sir, do I know you?" Then she turned to her new father, the one who married her mother 10 years ago, and let him take her arm like a scene they'd rehearsed. Someone laughed, the kind of brittle laugh you use to warn a dog off. The coordinator told me the receiving line was for family only. I was holding a gift with my handwriting on the card. Her name is Lily. She was born when I was 25, when her mother and I still thought generosity could outpace exhaustion. We were the kind of couple that built forts out of pay stubs and deli napkins. We didn't make it. The short version is that I worked nights, her mother worked days, resentment kept different hours, and one October afternoon a suitcase appeared that looked like a punctuation mark. A judge gave us a schedule that read like a custody flyer someone had tried to design in Microsoft Word, and my life reorganized itself into a map with circles around even-numbered Fridays. For years I wore fatherhood like a uniform with missing buttons. I showed up to games in a shirt that smelled like fryer oil, I kept a pair of ballet slippers in my glove box, I learned how to braid hair badly and then less badly. I paid what the court said, then more when I could. I kept receipts because my first lawyer was the kind of person who says, document everything, like people say, take an umbrella. I didn't go back to court. Every time I thought about it, the number in my bank account blinked like a warning light. When Lily was 9, her mother, Evelyn, met Martin. He wore good watches and the kind of kindness that photographs well. He approved of things. He took them to restaurants where the menus don't show prices, and he called me buddy with a smile that pressed down. We'll make sure she has everything she needs, he said, as if what she needed could be wrapped. He started coming to school concerts and standing in front of me when the class took a group photo. He was a better tipper than I was and better at remembering which teacher's husband worked in finance. People love a man who knows where to aim the charm. The messages started small and cut clean. Lily would get quiet after weekends at my place and say things like, "At Mom's we eat at the table," and I'd nod and pretend my coffee table hadn't been doing fine. Once, when she was 11, she asked me if I'd ever thought about being more ambitious. I laughed because I thought it was a joke. "Martin says you get what you demand," she added, or maybe repeated, and looked at my hands like they were a test I was failing. I did what men like me do when the room starts leaning. I tried to be nicer than the gravity. I took extra shifts. I saved for a car with a back seat that didn't squeak. I bought season passes to the museum because the museum is dignity you don't have to apologize for. When Lily turned 13, she stopped staying over. "Homework," she said. "An early practice," she said. I didn't push. I filled the time with other small improvements and pretended the ache in my chest was a habit I could quit. The year she started college, I sold the drum set I never learned to play and wrote a check for what the scholarship didn't cover. I didn't tell her. I had learned by then that money only counts if it has the right narrator. Evelyn had once returned a bag of groceries I'd left on the porch with a note, "We handle our own household." I took "our own" like a shove. Still, I paid. I paid because bills don't care who gets credit for a roof. 2 years ago my mother died. She was the kind of woman who hid 20s in the pockets of coats she donated and recipes in the margins of novels. In the box of things the hospice nurse handed me, under the reading glasses and pills reminder card, was an envelope with Lily's name and a note in my mother's tight blue script, "Give this when she chooses her person." Inside, a check, not a fortune, but heavy enough to matter, and a letter about marriage that makes my throat thick. "Choosing is not just love," she wrote. "It is chores and weather and who you call when the pipe bursts." She added one line on a post-it for me, "Jack, if Evelyn tries to reroute this, stand up." Standing up sounds brave and looks awkward when you're built polite. When Lily got engaged, I mailed the check to her apartment with a copy of the letter. I wrote nothing, because my mother's writing is better than mine. A week later the envelope came back, torn and retaped, a sticky note in Evelyn's hand: "We don't accept money with strings." There were no strings. There was an old woman's wish and the amount my mother said she wished someone had slipped her on her own day. I sat on my couch with the envelope and felt the unique fatigue of being told your generosity is a threat. We limped toward the wedding with logistics that had the sarcasm of fate. My name was on the invitation as John, which it has never been, seated on row 17 near family friends. My rehearsal dinner seat was regretfully limited. When I offered to pay for the rehearsal band, Martin called to say they'd prefer to keep finances simple, a sentence people use when they want control. He suggested I give a toast at brunch instead, something short and charming. I practiced in the shower. I picked a tie. I bought a suit that didn't look like it came with rental shoes. The morning of, I ironed the pocket square 3 times because my hands wanted something they could fix. I drove to the venue and parked in the overflow that required walking past a pond with rented swans. At the door a woman with a clipboard asked my name. I told her. She tilted her head. "Are you with the vendors?" she asked. I smiled in the way that keeps you from crying. "I'm the father of the bride," I said. She checked the list again. My name was there with a yellow highlight that looked like caution. I found my row. I sat. I watched my daughter come down the aisle on the arm of a man who has known her for a decade and has the money to prove it. I thought about being angry about that and wasn't. He has been kind to her in the ways that show. I was angry about the ways that don't. After, in the receiving line, the line the planner referred to as branding, I kid you not, Lily laughed for 3 couples, grimaced for 1, and then our eyes met. Something moved across her face that I recognized as calculation disguised as grace. "I'm sorry, sir," she said, and smiled at the couple behind me. The planner stepped between us, soft voice, firm hand, family only. I stood there with my gift and a sentence in my throat that would never land right. Lily looked past me to where Evelyn and Martin stood hosting with confidence and teeth. Evelyn's mother hugged me like I had taken a bad fall. Martin shook my hand and squeezed. "We're trying to keep things smooth," he said, and I knew we meant, without you. I made it to the bar. I ordered water. I stood by a pillar and tried to swallow the scene like a pill without liquid. Then Megan, no relation to the other stories of my life, this one is different, stepped out from behind a floral arch. She's Evelyn's older sister, the one who cried at our wedding because she believed in us so hard it looked painful. She hugged me with the kind of hug that banks effort. "I'm sorry," she said. I was ready to say, "Don't be," when she pressed a small USB drive into my palm like a spy in a bad movie. "If you have to," she said. "I can't watch this play again." Then she walked away and arranged place cards like she was innocent. I went to the bathroom because mirrors are honest even when you aren't. In the stall, I plugged the USB into my phone with an adapter I only own because my job makes me carry things like that. Files, 3 voice memos, 2 screenshots, 1 PDF. The first voice memo was Evelyn and Lily in Evelyn's kitchen. I recognized the clink of the spoon in the sugar jar. Evelyn said, "Light as frosting, we'll seat him where he can say he came." Lily said, "I don't want a scene." Evelyn said, "Then don't give him a part." Pause. "If he pushes, I'll speak to the coordinator." The second memo was Evelyn on the phone with Martin, months earlier. "The scholarship cleared," she said. "We can say we covered the gap, it photographs better." He laughed. She added, "He sent a check with Ruth's letter." I returned it. "I won't have him buying his way into pictures." Ruth. My mother. Buying a place in pictures with money that had a dead woman's handwriting on it. The screenshots were texts between Evelyn and the planner. "We need a plan if Bio-Dad attempts a toast." The reply, "Understood." The PDF was a budget for the wedding, line items with who paid. Under, bridal suite, photography, florals, Martin. Under, college loan lump sum paid 2021, E plus M. Not true. I remembered the night I Venmoed the bursar under a memo that said nothing because I have learned that words are witnesses that can be cross-examined. I remembered the months after when Lily thanked Evelyn in front of a room for making education possible, and I said, she's right, because kindness is a habit that sometimes masks erasure. I stood there shaking with expensive flowers 2 walls away. I thought about swallowing it. I pictured the brunch the next morning where I would be allowed to say 3 charming sentences that caused no weather. Then I pictured my mother's letter again and the line she'd added for me, stand up. I'm not brave. I'm tired. The DJ introduced the couple with fanfare that made people taller. They danced. Toast started, best friend, college roommate, Martin with a polished story about the night she told me Jack taught her to ride a bike, that turned my memory into his anecdote. When he finished, the DJ started to move on. I walked up. The coordinator moved to block me. She hesitated for a fraction of a second that contained all the times women like her have had to decide whether to be kind or to keep their jobs. I stepped around her and took the mic. I didn't shout. I didn't say anyone's name in the tone you reserve for passwords. I said, hi, because that's how I start things. I said I'm Lily's father. I said I would keep it short because I'm not cruel. The room shifted. People love a story that might misbehave. I watched Evelyn's mouth go small and Martin's hand go to her back like he could press her calm. I said the first time Lily tied her own shoe she wouldn't let me double knot it, and when it came undone and she tripped and cried and I retied it, she said, again by myself, and that's who she's been the whole time. I said when she was 9 she asked if I'd ever be more ambitious and I told her ambition can be a type of kindness if you choose the right things to build. I said she is the right thing. People relaxed. They thought maybe I was going to be graceful and leave them unscorched. Then I said, I was told I might make a scene if I spoke. I said, someone asked that I be sat far back so I could say I came. I said, I have kept a lot of things off stages. I looked at Lily, not at Evelyn. I held up my phone and said, I have proof of some of them, because when you are the parent who doesn't get to narrate, you keep receipts. My hand shook. I hated that. I hit play on the first voice memo. Evelyn's laugh poured out of the speakers, then her voice, I won't have him buying his way into pictures. The room inhaled like a single animal. I didn't stare at anyone. I didn't ask the DJ to rewind. I said, I'm not here to embarrass anyone. I'm here to say a real thing plainly one time. I said to my daughter, I paid your bursar directly in 2021 because you asked if you could stay in a class you loved and the office said you were short, and I put my pride in my stomach and sent the money like a secret because I didn't want kindness to be a competition. Lily's face did something complicated and young. Martin said, low enough to carry to the front rows, this is not the time. He was right and wrong. The time had been stolen slowly for 10 years. There is never a time people like Evelyn approve. I said, your grandmother wrote you a letter. It came back. I pulled the envelope from my jacket and set it on the head table next to the centerpiece like it belonged in the picture. I said, you can read it later. I said, baby, I am not asking you to choose sides. I am asking you to know the shape of the room you're in. A murmur started, the kind adults make when plot arrives. The planner made a move toward the soundboard. The DJ looked at me, then at the bride, then at his playlist like maybe there was a song for this. Evelyn took a step forward and said, light and sharp, we chose not to include certain elements today to protect our peace. She said elements like it meant you. Everyone looked at Lily because she was the only person whose response mattered. She stood there gripping her bouquet like it could do absolution. She said, almost to herself, I asked him not to speak because, and then her voice went to the place where truth lives before it learns to stand up straight. I put the mic down on the edge of the stage like I was done even though my body felt like it wasn't. I walked away because leaving is sometimes the only way to keep from making the fire worse. People parted like water that didn't want to get on my shoes. My seat was a long walk. I didn't make it. Megan found me by the bar with the USB drive still warm in my pocket. She said, "Thank you, fierce and small. She needs to see the whole painting." I went outside into air that felt unperformed. I sat on a low stone wall and watched a pair of swans ignore the rented music. My phone buzzed. "Hannah, my sister, are you okay?" I typed, "No," and then, "Yes," and then, "I did something I'm not sure about." She wrote, "You stood up. That feeling is nausea." I thought it was over. I had said the thing. The room would hate me. The photos would be edited to exclude me. The story would be written without me and I would be the footnote that made everyone feel virtuous. Then the glass doors opened, and Lily stepped out, alone, bouquet abandoned somewhere behind her, hairpins holding hard. She sat beside me on the stone and didn't speak. We listened to the rented joy leak out of the hall. She said, finally, without anger, "Why didn't you fight for me at the beginning? The beginning is where all the meanness hides." I said, "Because every time I did, I lost days with you." She nodded like she had suspected that and hated it. "Martin says you gave up," she added. "He wasn't there," I said. "He tells good stories." She looked at her hands, the same hands that once fit inside mine and now organize budgets and decide what tiny forks are for. "Mom said you wanted attention today," she said. "I wanted you to notice me," I said, "which is an attention that isn't flattering and is all I have." A coordinator poked her head out and asked if we were ready for cake. Lily laughed, one small bright thing, and said, "In a minute." Then she stood and went inside and left me with my mother's letter and a feeling like I'd set down a heavy thing in the most inconvenient place possible. I didn't go back in. I sat until the band started their medley of songs from the year I graduated high school. I walked to my car through a parking lot full of SUVs that belonged to Stability. I drove home and put the suit in the closet and set the envelope on the table and folded a towel because the body still wants tasks when the heart has nothing left. The next morning, my phone lit up with versions. "You ruined it. You were brave. You made it about you." Someone had to say it. A cousin posted a photo of me with a caption about "dads who show up," which she deleted an hour later, probably after a phone call. Martin sent me a text that read, "You will never see her again." Evelyn didn't text. Lily didn't either. Megan wrote, "Call me if you need me." I didn't call. I watched the light move across the kitchen floor like a patient teacher. At noon, someone knocked. I opened the door to find an old man in a postal hat and a smell like cigarettes and winter. He held out a certified letter. "Sign here," he said. The return address was Evelyn's. The letter inside had the tone of a person who knows which words in the law have teeth. "Cease and desist," it said in bold, because some templates are too tempting to resist. Attached, a printed list of instances of harassment, which included my presence at the wedding. I laughed, once, and felt the laugh frighten me. Then, half under the legal paper, folded into quarters until it had the warmth of a pocket, another note. My mother's handwriting, which I recognized like my own signature. Not the letter for Lily. This was a second one I hadn't known existed, addressed to whoever tells the truth when it costs them. "Sweetheart," it began. "People will call it a scene. Sometimes a scene is just a room finally being honest." I sat down at my old kitchen table and put my forehead against the cool wood like a person praying. The phone buzzed again. A new message, unsaved number. "It's Elise," it said, "Lily's maid of honor. She asked for your address." I didn't know what that meant. I breathed. I waited. I told myself not to invent an ending. It was Elise on my doorstep at 4, shoes in one hand, a garment bag in the other, hair shellacked into endurance. She looked like someone who had been holding up a ceiling. "She sent me," she said. Her voice shook the way honesty does when it hasn't been used in public. "She can't come now. She's occupied." She handed me the garment bag and a small box wrapped in simple paper. The bag is a bridesmaid dress, she said. Now it's a peace offering. The box is yours. Inside the box, my mother's letter, still sealed, my name on the post-it I'd added, and Lily's place card from the head table. On the back of the place card, in Lily's handwriting I hadn't seen since she was a teenager, sending me grocery lists for the weekends, curvy letters, decisive periods, she had written 2 sentences: I didn't know about the bursar. I want to talk when I can do it without an audience. That should have made me float. It didn't. It made me feel everything heavier. People think vindication feels like champagne. It feels like aftermath. Elise leaned against my counter like a person whose bones were tired. She had to go back in, she said. There were politics. But she wanted you to know she heard you. She told me to tell you she hated the kitchen memo about bio dad. Elisa's face tightened like she'd said more than she'd meant to. I shouldn't be in this, she added. I'm not neutral. I'm also not brave. Today you were. She left before I could thank her properly, because that's how messengers survive. For 2 days I was a room full of clocks. Every sound was the phone. Every silence was the same. I went to work. I changed the oil in my own old car because tasks beat guessing. I walked by the river where Lily and I used to throw pebbles and pretend the ripples were decisions. I thought about calling her. I did not. I thought about writing a letter and realized the last time I wrote a letter into that house it came back with a sticky note that told me what I meant. I waited because patience is not only virtue, sometimes it's the only door that opens. On the 3rd day, a message: can we walk? No photos. No advice. We met at a park where teenagers pretend they aren't crying when they are. She wore a sweater that made her look like the age she is, which is less than the age you need to be to untie decades of versions. We walked a loop. She kicked a leaf that didn't deserve it. I told her she didn't have to protect anyone's feelings but her own for an hour. She said she didn't know how. She started with soft things, because that's how people rehearse truth. The flowers were pretty, the band learned the song she loved, Martin's toast had made people feel safe. Then she pivoted without warning. I asked Mom why the check came back, she said. She said Grandma's letter was manipulative. She said money is control. She looked at me. She also said you wanted attention and you chose the one moment I couldn't escape. She's not wrong about the moment, I said. I chose it because I never get to choose any. That's not a defense. It's an explanation. We walked. She said she'd seen the PDF. She said Elise had given her the USB because Elise was tired of fixing seating charts in houses where the tables were rotten. She said she didn't know about the bursar money and she hated how that ignorance changed the color of an entire year. Did you do it to make Mom look bad? She asked. I shook my head. I did it to keep you in biochemistry because you liked the teacher. She smiled in spite of herself, because it was true, because I had listened when that mattered, because of all the details to remember, that one did something to her heart that speeches don't. She said Martin had told her I was making a naked grab for relevance. I said Martin tells stories that always end with his generosity. She said he can be kind and still erase people. I said I was counting on that sentence being possible, because otherwise I was a smaller villain in a room with a bigger one. She told me something I didn't expect. Grandma wrote me another letter, she said. A while ago. Mom found it in her desk after the funeral. She said it was old and not useful. I never saw it. Megan kept a copy. She produced a photocopy from her bag, folded and unfolded so many times the crease had memory. My mother's writing again, shakier but clear: if you ever feel like you're living inside someone else's good intentions, find a door. It might look rude. It's a door anyway. We sat on a bench where people have either made promises or broken them. It's hard to tell with benches. Lily said she felt like she'd been speaking in her mother's accent for years and only heard it at the altar when the rented vows echoed. She said she'd introduced Martin as her real dad at a company picnic once because she thought it would make everything easier, and she saw me flinch in her mind hours later and couldn't shake it. She said she had pretended not to know me because she had believed conflict could be avoided if she denied its source. She said it felt easy and then it felt like throwing herself overboard for no audience. I don't know who I am when you aren't a story I resist, she said. That's ugly. It's also true. I told her I loved her, which isn't helpful in some contexts. I told her I was sorry for the moments I had been small when I should have been tall. I told her being broke at 27 is not a moral failing but that it smells like one and I hadn't wanted her to breathe it. I told her I was sorry for every time my politeness made it easy to erase me. She asked if I'd take down the post I hadn't made. Mom said you posted audio. I laughed, because if this weren't my life it would be satire. I didn't, I said. I showed the room 1 minute of a thing I wish didn't exist. I didn't bring the internet to it. She nodded, relieved in a way that made me believe we still had a shot. I have to go, she said. There are meetings. Meetings is the word you use when your life has committees. She hugged me with arms that were both child and adult and left with the kind of quickness that suggests a door will either be used again or bricked up, depending on who controls the plans. The committee met, I assume. The committee is always meeting. Days passed. Martin sent a message that read like an invoice for respect. Evelyn sent one that read like a threat typed by a person who owns monogrammed stationery. Megan called and left a long voicemail where she said she was tired of being the only person in that house who can tell when charity is a costume. Elise sent a picture of Lily's bouquet in the back of her car, already browning. Nora, my sister, came over with bread. She set it down and said, "You're going to be the villain at cards for a year." I said, "Only a year?" She shrugged. "Maybe 2. Then someone else will get divorced or forget a birthday and you'll be a smaller villain." She cut slices without asking if I wanted any, because she knows sometimes kindness is not a question. "Do you regret it?" she asked. I thought about the moment between the first sentence and playing the memo when I could have sat down and swallowed it. I thought about Lily outside with her bouquet missing. I thought about Martin's hand in Evelyn's back. "No," I said. "I regret the decade that made it necessary." The first crack arrived as a text from Lily at midnight a week later. "We're not taking a honeymoon yet," it said. "I moved to my place. I need space." I didn't ask from whom. The next morning, a short one, "Can I see the receipts?" I sent the bursar confirmations by habit. 2 hours later, "I'm sorry I didn't know." I wrote, "I'm sorry knowing hurts." Then came a heavier door. A letter, real paper, actual stamp, from Evelyn's mother, who has never taken my side in recorded history. "I told myself keeping peace was piety," she wrote. "Sometimes it is laziness in a dress." I knew about the check. I should have kept my mouth closed when Evelyn talked about strings. I didn't. "I'm sorry." I read it twice because old women do not confess casually. Consequences rolled in like weather. Martin's firm hosted a gala, Lily didn't attend. A cousin posted a photo of the head table with a caption about placing people where they belong, and within a day deleted it after 3 comments that made her look mean in public. The planner sent an invoice to Evelyn for additional risk management services, which is a hilarious and horrible phrase for keeping a father away from a microphone. Megan, apparently, moved out of Evelyn's house with the sentence, "I will not babysit narratives," written on a sticky note left on the refrigerator. There was one more piece I didn't see coming. A man I didn't recognize knocked one afternoon wearing a jacket that said bursar in tiny letters because the universe likes drama. He was middle-aged, tired in the way of people who deal with numbers that keep parents awake. "You're Jack?" he asked. I nodded. He handed me a folder. "We found an accounting error from 2021, he said. An external donor was credited for a payment that should have been anonymous. He glanced up. "We corrected the record." Inside, a printout showing a line item reclassified from Family Contribution, E+M, to Direct Payment, Guardian. He had blacked out my name, but the effect was the same. He looked at me like he knew he was handing me something heavier than paper. "We don't usually do this," he said. "But, well, errors can distort gratitude. I didn't send it to anyone. I put it in a folder with my mother's letters and the USB I hope I never play again." I did send Lily a photo of a page in one of her old notebooks I'd found while looking for something else, a list titled Things I Want to Remember, with items like Dad's terrible omelet, how he always parks crooked but tries, and the way he hates the word moist. She replied with a photo of the head table place card again, this time with a coffee stain and a new note in the same teenager handwriting: "I'm sorry for the kitchen. I'm sorry for the receiving line. I'm not sorry you spoke. We didn't fix it in a month." People who speak of redemption like a sprint have never lived in a house full of narrative furniture. But there were small changes that felt like a new weather system trying to push the old one out. Lily showed up on a Sunday with a plant. She put it on my windowsill and watered it like an apology you don't kneel for. We made a list for her life that was embarrassingly practical: call the utility company, change the name on a lease, set aside money every paycheck for not a wedding. We did not talk about Martin except the part where she said, "Not bitter, he loves being seen loving," and I said, "That's a real thing and also not enough." Evelyn wrote me a letter, which is how people who have spent years controlling scenes try to control them again. It was 3 pages of beautiful sentences about trauma response and protecting peace, and a paragraph about how my mother never liked her, which is untrue and irrelevant. It ended with a line that would have wrecked me a year ago: "Please respect our boundaries and refrain from inserting yourself into moments of high emotion." I wrote back a paragraph that took me an hour to trim to 6 lines: "I will not post. I will not gossip. I will not make scenes for sport. I will answer when Lily calls. I will support her without tallying points. I will not disappear to make your story easier. I am her father." She didn't reply. That is also an answer. People asked me, quietly, like stealing, if I would do it differently. If I would pull Evelyn aside in the kitchen and bargain with her instead of daring her in public. If I would skip the memo and just toast my daughter and let the lies sleep. I don't know. I know this: there are houses where lying is called love because it keeps pictures pretty. There are lives that are one long rehearsal for a word you hope you'll never need. And then a day arrives with swans and a band and rented vows, and you are asked to applaud your own erasure. If you speak, you will be told you made it about you. If you don't, it will be about you anyway. You'll just be quiet in the corner of the story that bears your name. Lily and I see each other now like 2 people learning a language we should have been speaking for 10 years. Sometimes we get the tense wrong. Sometimes we sit and do our taxes together because intimacy, at this age, is often spreadsheets and soup. Sometimes she asks about her grandmother and I tell the stories my mother told me when I was too young to think they were worth recording, and we both pretend we can hear my mother's laugh in the plumbing. Sometimes she cries when she sees a photo of herself at the head table because she remembers choosing open seating and being told, assigned places photograph better. She still loves her mother. I do not require otherwise. She is angry and then loyal and then confused and then tired. I'm learning not to be threatened by any of those steps. I am not a faction, I am a chair she can sit on when she is done marching. Martin exists. He will continue to host rooms with confidence and teeth. He will learn, maybe, that some generosity counts less when it auditions. Or he won't. That is not my repair. As for me, I work, I make the omelets she still calls terrible, I pay for the things I can pay for without making them receipts for a courtroom I'm not interested in opening in my head anymore. I keep my mother's letters in a folder I can reach without standing on a chair. I keep the USB because shame evaporates if you leave it in the sun, and some things need shade until the right time. I go to the river and throw stones and practice what I will say only if someone asks, which is, "My daughter pretended not to know me once." I don't blame her. I didn't know how to be seen either. We are learning. If you've read this expecting a triumph, I'm sorry. I don't have that door. I have a quieter one. Last week Lily sent a photo of her kitchen table, a cheap one, mine once, with a water ring from a plant that didn't make it, set for two with bowls and spoons and a note, tonight, soup. Tomorrow, who knows? She added a postscript, do you still have Grandma's recipe for the lemon cake? The one that fails if you rush it? I sent it. I wrote, it fails if you rush it, as if recipes are therapy. She replied with a picture 2 hours later of something that looked more like cornbread than cake. Too fast, she wrote. And then, try again Sunday. I will show up with eggs and sugar and patience. I will leave my mic at home. I will stand up when it's time to take the cake from the oven, and I will sit down the rest of the time. I will let the room be unphotogenic and honest. And even now, when the house is quiet and the late light puts a mark on the floor where her toddler feet used to land, I still sometimes put my head on my arms and whisper the sentence I keep trying to outgrow, I don't know what to do. Then I do the next unglamorous thing that looks like love, wash a bowl, text my daughter good night, lay my mother's letter flat so the crease softens, and let that be the only truth that needs a microphone today.
Follow me for more stories.